Before there was Fortnite, before there was Infinity Blade, even before there was Shadow Complex, but after a bunch of Unreal Tournament games, Epic gave us Gears of War, the game that proved that Microsoft could juggle more than one science fiction shooter at a time. Released all the way back in 2006, this was one of the Xbox 360's first must-own exclusives, allowing the system to take an early lead over the PlayStation 3. Now, on its fifth installment with multiple spin-offs, Gears of War has been a reliable player for Microsoft and one of the reasons to own an Xbox. That is, until now, because 2 decades after they first debuted, Marcus Phoenix, Dominic Santiago, and the one and only Coltrane are about to go where they've never been before. That's right, the PlayStation 5. Rev up your chainsaw bayonet, everybody, because it's time to finally review Gears of War Reloaded. Looking back at Gears of War 2 decades later, it's easy to fall into the dismissive trap of calling it a big, dumb action game with meathead characters and a paper-thin story. And while some of that is unquestionably true, it really fails to capture why this 19-year-old game was so important to the games industry. It was more than just another top-selling exclusive for Microsoft to trot out between releases of Halo and Forza, because Gears of War was actually the blueprint for how to make modern third-person shooters. It completely reshaped the genre, leading to a whole generation of moody shooters with snap-to-cover mechanics and active reloading, most even using the same Unreal Engine as Gears. It was a big hit, not just with Xbox fans, but also critics. In fact, one of those critics was me. I gave the game an A back in 2006, gushing that it was one of the year's best games. A game that was so good that it was actually worth buying an Xbox 360 just for that one singular experience. I ultimately concluded that this game will change the way you look at action games. It's a stunning example of how good a game can be if the right people are developing it. Yeah, like I said, I loved it. At its core, Gears of War Reloaded is just an updated version of 2015's Gears of War Ultimate Edition, which in turn was an updated version of the 2006 original, this time developed by the Coalition. Look, I suspect that it's definitely going to annoy some Xbox Series X owners that Microsoft remastered a game that was already remastered, but I doubt any PlayStation 5 owners are going to complain. What they're getting is the best looking version of Gears of War yet, with all kinds of fun ways to make it look and play even better, including everything from HDR to support for 120 frames per second. We'll nitpick some of the finer details later in this review, but what you need to know is that Reloaded actually looks better than Ultimate Edition, and that already looked amazing. Now, there is a story here, though it often feels like it's more of a series of explosive set pieces than a well-crafted narrative. After being rescued from prison, Marcus Phoenix leads a squad of macho action heroes on a high-stakes mission to help the resistance fighters push back against an alien foe that's been planning its attacks deep underground. Using a large metal backpack straight out of a B-movie from the 1950s, the Cogs will need to fight their way to the enemy's tunnels using technology to map the space and gain an upper hand. Of course, that's easier said than done. Right from the very start, we're flung into the action with barely any information. We're basically told to aim our gun at the enemy and then just shoot until it dies. If one gets too close, you can use the chainsaw on the bottom of your gun to quite literally cut them in half. Once you've gotten the hang of that, you'll want to throw grenades into the emergence holes to stop the invasion, and master the active reload, which rewards players' timing with stronger bullets. This is all the stuff that I remembered going in. What ended up surprising me was how well crafted the first Gears of War was. And I don't mean just for its time, but for any time. Sure, there are of course some dated elements here, especially when it comes to the enemies. But let me tell you, Cliff Bleszinski and his team really nailed it right from the start, on almost every level. You really see this in the flow of the action. The game likes to throw you into these epic firefights that all manage to feel a bit different, with none of them overstaying their welcome. They always seem to find that sweet spot, wrapping things up right before the action gets repetitive. and then they'll let the players breathe, usually by having us explore the creepy surroundings or chatting up the squad. And then, just as you've gotten used to the peace and quiet, the game will slam you with another exciting action sequence. All of a sudden, just like that, you're back into the thick of it. And what I really like about this game is how they find different ways to frame the action. Some levels are all about going in guns blazing, while other bits will require a stealthier approach. Some stages are small and confined, ideal for a shotgun, while the next bit may be wide open and better for a sniper rifle. And just when you've grown tired of walking everywhere, you'll end up getting in a car and driving across city, dealing with a bunch of bat monsters known as the Krill. The stage designs are admittedly linear, usually with only one way to go, but there is more to the level designs than meets the eye. For one thing, the game's actually smart about splitting up the squad, forcing players to choose between going left and right in almost every level. This is especially fun if you're going through the co-op mode with a friend, as it forces both players to use their different vantage points to help the rest of the team stay alive. There's some really clever ways they split the squad up here, and the moments where you can't rely on your teammates are some of the best and most tense bits in the entire game. Another thing that the game got right from the very start was the visual world building. Instead of being bright and colorful and polished like Halo, the Gears world feels dead and discarded. We run through bombed out buildings that look like they were abandoned years ago. I mean, the last remaining humans fight to stay alive, but it's painfully clear that the aliens won. And even if we do end up winning this war, what kind of world are we going to be left with? That's the kind of question that you end up asking yourself if you stick around one place for too long. Thankfully, the game is good about whisking us away to the next exciting level or fight or whatever. This is one of those games that doesn't just get the big stuff right, but even the small stuff stands out. For example, one of the things that genuinely surprised me was how different each gun felt. Not because of the graphics or anything on the TV screen, but rather because of the controller's rumble. From the powerful shotgun rounds to the tension of the torque bow, you can actually tell what weapon you're firing from rumble alone. As silly as it sounds, this is actually one of those small things that made the game feel weirdly modern. That said, there are definitely elements to this game that will remind you that Gears of War is nearly 20 years old. You'll see this in how the enemies act. Oh, they'll snap to cover just like our hero, but then they'll race into the open for no reason, just waiting to get shot at. There are so many situations where you'll walk right up to a locust baddie and they won't have a clue what to do. Instead of shooting or escaping, they'll just stand there, dumbfounded. You'll also see this with the computer-controlled helpers. While they do a good job overall, there are just so many times where they'll get in your way or not fire at obvious targets. Gears really is a stark reminder of how often we take smarter enemies for granted. You'll also notice that the cinemas look noticeably worse than the rest of the game. Where the Ultimate Edition used the game's engine to bring the story to life, Reloaded uses the video footage from that decade-old remaster. Apparently, the developers ran into some major complications in trying to redo them in-engine on the PlayStation 5. So, this is just what we get. That's understandable, I suppose, but it is unfortunate. There's definitely a dip in quality whenever the cinemas come up, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice it every single time. As this is really just a remastered version of the Coalition's Ultimate Edition, it comes with a lot of the same problems that plagued that version of the game a decade ago. One of those issues was the lighting. Gears of War is simply too bright. The original version of the game played with the darkness, often using it to not only set a mood and atmosphere, but also have it be a deadly obstacle. This is especially true in the second act, where we need to run from one lighted area to the next before the Krill get you. Frustratingly, I found it almost impossible to tell the difference between the dark and the lit parts of the stages. Sometimes it's obvious, but there were so many times where I thought I was safe, only to have a whole swarm of Krill take out the entire squad. Yeah, that's annoying. It's also worth mentioning that Gears of War comes with a competitive multiplayer mode that is basically ripped straight out of the original game. It only supports 8 players, so it will feel a lot smaller when compared to modern multiplayer shooters. But at the same time, it does come with a nice assortment of game types, including Team Deathmatch, Blitz, King of the Hill, one-shot kills, 2 vs 2, and even a fun assassination mode. While I'm sure that these modes will bring back a lot of nostalgia for those who really got into fighting Cog vs Locust 20 years ago, I have to admit that they didn't do a whole lot for me. I always preferred Halo's multiplayer, which had an agile character that could get just about anywhere with the right vehicle or perseverance. In contrast, these Gears characters feel like they weigh 1,000 pounds and they lumber around a small arena. There's just no energy or excitement to any of these online matches. For me, the real star of this package is the blockbuster action found in the campaign mode, which can be played with or without a co-op friend. Back in 2006, some gamers were disappointed that Gears only lasted 8 or 9 hours. But compared to modern action games that barely clock in at 90 minutes, this campaign truly feels like an epic miniseries. The story and characters may be simple, but it's always exciting and it's constantly finding new ways to surprise you. Really, more than anything else, I was genuinely impressed by how well this held up all these years later. This is a great looking remaster with a well-paced story and lots of bullet sponge enemies that die in extremely satisfying ways. It took a long time and an unconventional path to get here, but Gears of War Reloaded is a perfect fit on the PlayStation 5. The Microsoft exclusive that many thought would never cheat on the Xbox has finally come to the PlayStation 5, and it was worth the 2-decade wait. Gears of War Reloaded is the best looking version of the 2006 game yet, with loads of content, an explosive story, and all the multiplayer modes that you remember from the Xbox 360. Unfortunately, it also comes with some brain-dead enemies and a few other dated gameplay elements that will instantly remind you that this is indeed a 19-year-old game. Aside from a few wrinkles and age spots, this remaster of a remaster is a fun reminder of why the original Gears of War was so influential when it first came out. Regardless of whether you're a PlayStation loyalist who never got around to playing this series or a longtime fan who wants to experience the best looking version available, you're not going to be disappointed with Gears of War Reloaded. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new features and reviews almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. Will Microsoft announce Halo on the PlayStation 5 this year? I mean, come on, after Forza and now Gears, I think that pretty much everybody expects Halo to make that jump at some point in the future. But will that be a 2025 announcement? Let me know in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back later this week with a review of Deliver at All Costs and 9 Years of Shadows. Plus, there's going to be a brand new Review Crew episode. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.